The call came at 7:14 on a Tuesday evening. My mother sounded almost cheerful. Maya, your father and I sold the house. I smiled from the porch of my beach house. That's great, Mom. Are you finally retiring somewhere warm? We are. Actually, we found the perfect place. Where? She paused. Your beach house. My smile disappeared. What? Your father thinks it makes sense, she said. You barely use the whole property anyway. We need somewhere stable, and this is already here. Mom, I bought this house. I know. Her voice stayed strangely calm, but we're family. Your father and I sold our house to help Julian. He has $18,000 in credit card debt, and we couldn't leave him buried under it. I sat up. So you sold your house to pay his debt? We had to help him. And now you're moving into mine? You're making this sound much worse than it is. Then she added, we're asking you to let your parents live with you. For how long? She hesitated. We'll figure that out once we're settled. My stomach tightened. When are you coming? Tomorrow morning. The call ended. I barely slept. At 6:42 the next morning, my phone buzzed. Mom, we'll need the master bedroom. Your father has trouble with stairs. Another message followed. Mom, you can move your things into the downstairs room. Then, Mom, the movers should arrive around 7. I stared at that message. They had already hired movers. They hadn't asked me. They had simply decided. I looked around the living room. I'd spent years working 80-hour weeks to afford this place. Every room reminded me why I'd walked away from corporate life. This house was the first thing I'd ever built entirely for myself. I opened my laptop and pulled up the property records. My name was the only name on the deed. Then I called an attorney. After listening, he said, they don't own the property, Maya, but if they arrive and refuse to leave, don't handle it emotionally. Document everything and call me. So they can't just move in? Not without your permission. I ended the call. A low engine suddenly rumbled outside. I walked to the window. A moving truck was turning into my driveway. My parents weren't coming tomorrow. They were already here. They thought they were arriving at their new home. What they didn't know was that I'd already made one decision they hadn't planned for. The moving truck stopped 3 feet from my front door. My mother stepped out first, holding a coffee as if this were an ordinary morning. Good, you're awake. I opened the door. Mom, what are you doing? She glanced at the movers. Getting settled. Into my house? She sighed. Maya, please don't make this difficult. Your father and I need somewhere stable. You sold your house yesterday. We did. And hired movers before asking me? Her expression tightened. Everything happened quickly. No, you decided quickly. My father stepped out of the car. We're not here to fight, he said. We just need a place for a while. There is no for a while, Dad. You never asked me. My mother lowered her voice. Julian's situation became serious. We used the money from the house to clear most of his debt. We couldn't afford another property afterward. So you decided mine was available? No one's taking anything from you. She pointed toward the house. We're simply living here. A mover approached. Where should we put the bedroom furniture? Master bedroom, my mother said. I stepped in front of him. Don't move anything inside. The mover stopped. My father frowned. Maya. I said no. For a second, my mother stared at me. Then she turned toward the movers. Go ahead. Start unloading. My stomach tightened. I said no. She finally looked at me. Your father has trouble with stairs. Surely you can do this for us. For a second, I almost stepped aside. Then I remembered her message from that morning. The movers should arrive around 7. They hadn't planned to ask. They had already made the decision for me. I walked into my office and closed the door. On my desk were copies of every message, my property deed, and my attorney's number. I opened the security app and saved footage of the driveway, the truck, and everyone entering my property. Then my phone rang. My attorney. I checked the county records after our conversation, he said. About my parents? Yes. I wanted to verify the details of their house sale. I sat down. What did you find? There was another entity involved in the transaction. What kind? A company. My heart skipped. Whose company? He paused. Julian's. I opened the documents he'd emailed me. The sale price was $480,000. I stared at the number. Julian owed $18,000. Even after taxes and expenses, there should have been enough money left for my parents to rent a place. Something wasn't adding up. Then I looked at the company's registration. Julian's name was listed as the owner. I stared at it until the letters blurred. My parents hadn't sold their house because they simply had nowhere else to go. The sale had something to do with Julian, and somehow my beach house was part of the plan. I just didn't know how yet, but I was going to find out. I called my attorney back before I left the office. Tell me exactly what you're seeing. He pulled up the sale records. The house sold for $480,000. I know. According to the records, $360,000 went to a company owned by Julian. My throat tightened. How much? $360,000. I stared at the screen. That doesn't make sense. Julian only owed $18,000. Exactly. My attorney sent me the transaction records. Look at the company receiving the money, he said. Then check what it was used for. I opened the documents myself. The company had recently applied for financing to purchase a commercial property. Then I saw something that made me stop. The financing application listed a family residence as additional security. I looked at the address. My address. They listed my house. My attorney's voice became serious. Maya, they cannot pledge your property without your signature. Writing your address on an application doesn't give them any legal rights to the house. Then why would they put it there? That, he said, is what we need to find out. I kept reading. The application had been prepared before my parents ever called me. Before they announced they were moving in. Before the moving truck arrived. Maybe they didn't need my house because they had nowhere to live. Maybe they needed somewhere to stay while Julian's deal was being arranged. Either way, they had planned around my property without asking me. I walked into the living room. My mother was unpacking plates in my kitchen. My father was carrying boxes down the hallway. Mom? She looked over. Yes? What's Julian buying? Her hand stopped. Why would you ask that? Because I know about the financing application. The room went silent. My father's expression changed. My mother slowly put the plate down. I don't know what you're talking about. I held up my phone, then explained why my address is listed as additional security. My father stepped toward me. Maya, you don't understand how business documents work. Then explained them. He opened his mouth. Nothing came out. My mother finally whispered, Your attorney showed you that? No. I looked directly at her. I found it. For the first time since they arrived, she looked afraid. I didn't raise my voice. I simply said, You're not staying here. My father shook his head. You can't do this to your family. I looked at the boxes scattered across my living room. You already tried to do something to mine. Then my phone rang. My attorney. Maya, listen carefully. Don't touch anything in that moving truck. Why? I found another reference to your property in the financing records. My eyes moved toward the driveway. What kind of reference? I don't know yet. But before they leave, photograph anything you can see without opening or moving their belongings. I looked through the window. One of the movers was carrying a sealed banker box from the truck. A handwritten label was visible on the side. I couldn't read all of it, but I recognized one word. Deed. My heart stopped. Whatever my parents had planned, I suddenly had a feeling my house wasn't the only thing they had tried to claim. I stared at the box in the mover's hands. Stop. The mover froze. My mother turned sharply. Maya, what are you doing? I pointed toward the box. What's inside that? Neither of my parents answered. I immediately called my attorney. Can I photograph the label? Yes, don't open anything that isn't yours. Document what you can see. I took several pictures. The label read, Deed, Beach Property. But beneath it, I saw something that made my heart stop. My address. They had brought a copy of my deed with them. Mom, I said quietly, why do you have my deed? Her face went pale. My father stepped forward. It's just paperwork. Paperwork for what? Silence. I pulled up the financing application on my phone. My address was listed as additional security. My mother looked at my father. We were trying to help Julian. By using my property? It was temporary. Without asking me? My father finally snapped. We knew you'd say no. The room went completely silent. I stared at him. You knew I'd say no? He looked away. That's why we didn't ask. That sentence hurt more than anything else they had said. They hadn't misunderstood me. They had planned around my refusal. My parents had sold their house, transferred $360,000 to Julian's company, prepared financing documents using my address, brought a copy of my deed, and then arrived with a moving truck expecting me to surrender. I opened the folder I'd prepared. The sale records, the financing application, their messages, the photographs. Everything was there. I've documented all of it, I said. My mother started crying. Maya, please. I shook my head. No, you had your chance to ask. My attorney called again. I answered on speaker. He explained that he had preserved the records and that the financing application could not use my property without my authorization. Then he added something else. Without your property as security, Julian's financing cannot proceed as submitted. My father stared at the phone. So you're destroying his future? No. I looked at him. I'm refusing to build it with my house. I turned toward the movers. I own this property. You no longer have permission to unload anything. The movers began putting the boxes back into the truck. My parents stood silently as their plan disappeared piece by piece. 2 hours later, the truck pulled away. I watched their car disappear down the coastal road. Then I walked back inside. For the first time in days, the house was completely quiet. I stepped onto the porch and listened to the waves. My parents had spent my entire life teaching me that being a good daughter meant sacrificing myself for everyone else. But I finally understood the difference. Helping your family is a choice. Being used by them is not. I hadn't destroyed Julian's business. I hadn't taken their money. I had simply protected what I had worked for. And for the first time, I wasn't choosing myself instead of my family. I was choosing myself because I was family too. If you enjoyed this story, subscribe to Revenge Diaries for more powerful family betrayal, revenge and justice stories,